Hey, what's up? Quick video for you guys. Recently I made an engine oil video which kind of got a bit out of hand. It was a bit spur of the moment, and I was just making dinner and I thought, you know what? Why don't I just talk about diesel engine oil while I make dinner? And the thing about that is it doesn't just provide like snappy information for people, which is what people need and want. So I'm just going to cover things off really quickly. If you've got a 1990s Japanese diesel, so anything from like a Nissan Safari to a Nissan Terrano, a Delica or Pajero, anything in the Toyota family. So it doesn't matter if it's a 3L powered Hilux or Hiace or like a Land Cruiser Prado, or like a 75 or 70 series Land Cruiser. If it was a diesel engine for Japan, built in Japan, a JDM diesel engine from the 90s, the engine oil that you need is an API, which stands for American Petroleum Institution, I think, CJ4 or CI4. I should have really double checked this before I... Yeah, so what you need is an API CJ4 or CF4. On the bottle, it will say either CJ4 or CF4 or CF4 plus, or it might be missing the digit. It might just say CF or CJ. And the C stands for diesel. If the bottle says S on it and solely says S, only says S, it means it's for a petrol engine. A lot of times the bottles of oil will either have a C rating or an S rating or both, because in modern standards, engine oils are built to be cross-compatible with different fueled vehicles. So the most important thing is the API rating. So originally our 90s diesel vehicles would have used an earlier model of the diesel C rating, which is now obsolete. But the thing about diesel engine oils is they're mostly backwards compatible. So the newer engine oils, which is the CJ4 and the CI4 and the CF4, things like that, they're always backwards compatible with the older versions. And the current CK4, which is the latest API standard for diesel engine oils, is also backwards compatible for the older diesel engines. But you might not necessarily want to run the latest diesel engine oil if you've got a 90s Japanese diesel engine. The reason being is the newer, more modern CK series engine oils doesn't have the really high levels of additives that the older engine oils have. And the reason that they don't have the high levels of additives is because the newer diesel engines have DPFs, or diesel particulate filters, as well as catalytic converters. And something like zinc, which is just one of the best anti-wear additives that you can put into a diesel engine oil or any engine oil, isn't really good for modern diesel engines. And the reason being is there's always going to be a little bit of engine oil that makes it up the cylinder liner and then past the oil seal rings on the piston. And that means it's going to enter the combustion chamber and then be burnt as part of the combustion cycle. It's then zapped out the exhaust port into the exhaust system, obviously, and then it ends up in the diesel particulate filter, and something like zinc can block that up, and it can even cause what's called catalyst poisoning, so it can damage the catalytic converter. So that's why the more modern CK series diesel engine oils don't have like the really high levels of anti-wear agents as part of their additive package. So you're much better off going with an API CJ4 or CF4 or CF4 plus. Now, as for the viscosities, this is what people like to argue about the most, as well as synthetic versus mineral. I spoke a lot about it when I was making butter chicken, cooking dinner for us at home, and talking about that. Look, it comes down to one thing. If you're changing your engine oil and you're changing it frequently enough, it doesn't really matter what you put in it. I personally lean towards synthetic just because of my experience in the industry, and I started off in the automotive industry when I was 13, 14. I got my first job at Super Cheap Auto, and back then Penrite, the oil that I actually use in my van at the moment, they sent a representative out to New Zealand, and those people came around and spoke to us about the different additives and things like that. synthetic versus mineral. And then over the years, I was kind of, unbiased towards synthetic. I heard all the nightmare stories, because remember, these stories have been going around for 20 plus years. So I kind of grew up with them. And then I started working in workshops, and I got first-hand experience in seeing things and actually dumping full synthetic into like 1985 big diesel trucks at like a very professional workshop. And one of the workshops that knew exactly what they were doing. They only bought the best products. They charged their customers for it, and the customers knew that. But these vehicles, they survived. And there's a lot of testing being done already on synthetics and things like that. So please don't believe the hype that if you put synthetic in your engine oil, in your engine, it's going to clean everything out so much that all the gunk and sludge that was holding that thing together will just collapse, and all of a sudden you'll sprout leaks everywhere and you'll lose tolerances and it'll start making noise. That's BS. It's utter BS. When people develop these synthetic engine oils, they do testing on older engines, like strenuous testing, properly in cold and hot environments. So if you just want something that flows really fast and can withstand really high temperatures, you can't go wrong with a synthetic. If you're kind of in the middle, you're not really sure, semi-synthetic's not bad. And if you want to stick to what's safe, and you don't trust me, or you don't trust the independent oil labs and people that test these things, then just stick with a mineral. What I spoke about during that butter chicken video, it seems so weird saying that butter chicken video for my automotive YouTube channel. Anyway, what seems so weird is, and I did touch on that, is the 15W40 is what pretty much everyone runs in these things around the world, including Japan. And yes, I know when you pull the dipstick out, it says 10W30 on the dipstick. And nothing has really changed when it comes to that type of oil being recommended by car manufacturers for certain engines. So what I'm trying to say here, without complicating it, is we have a problem here in Australia as well as Southeast Asia, where even new cars like the new 200 series, well, it's not new anymore, the 300 series is out, getting older every day. When the 200 series came out, Toyota recommended something like 0W20 or 0W30 for it. It was really thin, and what was happening is, in these hot climatic conditions that we have, atmospheric temperatures, and when these vehicles are working hard, when they're climbing hills, when they're towing, or when they're off-road, things that these cars are designed for, that 10W30 or 0W20 quickly reached its operational limits. And the thinner the engine oil, obviously, the easier it is for it to get past the oil sealing rings and the pistons. And therefore, it starts to get burnt. And what was happening with a lot of these cars is they were burning excessive amounts of oil. And if you Google it, Toyota engines, new cars burning oils, things like that, it's a common thing. I worked at a rental car place recently, and we had like a big fleet of brand new cars. Most of the vehicles, I think 3,000 plus vehicles in circulation, were under a year old. And when I would pull the dipsticks on those cars, you would be surprised that most of them were just above the absolute minimum on the dipstick. And they were only about 6 months old, and they've only done about, 10, 11, 12,000 kilometers. It's because of these thin oils. So why do engineers and why do car manufacturers recommend such thin oils, including 10W30 for our older turbo diesel engines, or diesel engines like the 1KZ and the higher super custom? Fuel savings and emissions. There is people out there that say, you don't know crap, the engineers know better, and I'm sure they do. I'm sure they know better. It's not always the engineers that decides these things as to what engine oil or what viscosity of engine oil goes into the engines. Remember, these engines are built to meet, most of them are built to meet Euro standards for emissions testing. And for example, if an engine is built today to meet Euro 6, most likely it would have provisions in there for it to also be compatible with the expected upcoming Euro 7 emissions laws. And they need to be compatible for that if they want to sell those cars fitted with those engines around the world. And the thing about these thin oils is, if you have some Play-Doh in a cup here and you have some water in a cup here and you try to stab it with a plunger, the Play-Doh is going to be much more difficult. It's going to take more energy for you to get that plunger into it versus just the water. So the thinner engine oils provide less resistance, and that means it's considered a fuel-saving oil. There's less energy taken up by the engine to actually churn that engine oil around, and therefore it consumes less fuel and has less parasitic draw when it comes to power from the engine. Any other workshop in Japan, in Australia, in New Zealand, in South Africa, basically around the world, including America, if you look at diesel engines in America, fleet engine oils, big trucks, they all tend to run 15W40. And that's where you find like the mineral and semi-synthetic engine oils, because that's like the bread and butter product for these companies, 15W40. You're definitely not going to do any damage, I guarantee it, if you run 1540 in a 1KZ or a TD42 or any other Japanese diesel from the 90s. It's very happy running on 1540, especially if you live in like a really hot climate like Florida or Texas or the Middle East or even here in Australia. Now, if you want to go a step above, if you want better cold, fast-flowing performance or better startup performance from your engine oil, then you can always reduce the first number, the winter number. You can always go down to a 10W40, a 5W40, or even a 0W40 if you want. And that's where you'll find the more premium products within an oil manufacturer's lineup. So 1540 will be the bread and butter oil for like big trucks, fleets where they can sell it in big 20-gallon drums and large packages, and to workshops and things like that. API CJ4, CI4, CF4 rated, and even some CK4 engine oils, like I mentioned, the new ones are also stamped on the bottle CJ, CI, CF4 as well. So it's perfectly fine to use those. Where they sell the premium engine oil lines, their synthetic lines, their semi-synthetic lines, is in the 10W40, 5W40, 0W40, even 0W50 if you can find it. And so what you want to run in your diesel engine is up to you. As long as you're changing it frequently enough, it doesn't really matter. I will say though, if you plan to do extended drain intervals, so you want to go more than 7,500 kilometers, go with a synthetic. If you plan on changing the engine oil every 3,000 to 5,000 kilometers, you'll be fine with a mineral. And if you just want to go somewhere in between 5,000 and 7,000 kilometers, you can go with a semi-synthetic. It's up to you. If you're changing it and dropping it frequently enough, every 6 months with a nice new filter, it doesn't really matter whether you go synthetic, semi, or full mineral. And most of you guys that watch these videos are from the United States. And I'm really jealous because I see all the highest pictures that people post on the highest North American Facebook page. And you guys have some nice scenery and nice places to take these vans. Here in Perth, I don't really get anywhere to take it. Perth is, I think it's the most isolated modern city in the world. So if I drive north, there's nothing there. If I drive south, there's nothing there. And if I drive east, it'll take me a good 2,500 kilometers until I reach Adelaide, which is basically a town of nothing as well. So I don't really have anywhere to take it. Anyway, I thought I'd give you guys a couple of recommendations for engine oil. It's easy for me to sit here and say API CJ4, CF4, the API ratings for engine oils, the viscosities and things like that, but you know, where do you go out and what oil do you buy? So two engine oils that I can recommend that you can get in North America is Shell Rotella, either T4 or T6. I believe T4 is the semi-synthetic or mineral, and the T6 is like the top dog, fancy pants, the best engine oil you can put in any diesel. So if you can afford the T6, go for that. Otherwise, go for something like Dello 400. And there's also a whole lot of different subcategories within Dello for you to explore. So I hope this video helps. I hope it clears up a lot of confusion and it saves you having to watch that long, lengthy, pretty awkward cars and cooking video. All right, thanks for your time. Goodbye.